us at Advent. Hope waits for us to trust. Hope waits for our commitment to a land that's kind and just. In this time of preparation for the work of co-creation, for the birthing of a world that heals the ones in pain, hope is born in us again.
Hello and welcome to this time of reflection for December 4th to the 10th, this second week in the season of Advent. I want to acknowledge that I am here in my office, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I am grateful to these nations and to their ancestors for their faithful stewarding of this land where I now am able to live and to serve and to minister. If I have a hope for this season of Advent, if we all have a hope for this season of Advent, it might be that taking the time to acknowledge the land that we are on might actually bring us into a closer awareness of our relationship with our Indigenous siblings, and that somehow this acknowledgement might bring us towards greater reconciliation with one another. May it be so. Well, our theme for this Advent season here at Mount Seymour United Church is called The Inn, Housing the Holy. And we continue this week to explore ways that we can be and that we are homes for the sacred, houses for the holy. This being the second week of Advent in our church on Sunday morning, and here now we light a candle of peace. So I light this candle of peace now, and I place it inside the stable. That this light that I offer, this light of peace, might illuminate a door of welcome. That this light of peace might shine in my heart and in your heart, that it might shine in my life and in yours, that it might shine in the heart of this community. May peace awaken us to possibilities. May peace lead us to greater hospitality. May peace help us to know that there is room in this inn, this house for the holy. Well, each week during the season of Advent this year, we are sharing a message from one of the prophets. Some of the messages will be from the prophets that appear in the Hebrew scriptures, and some of them will be from the prophets that appear in the Christian scriptures or the New Testament. And today we hear wisdom from the prophet Baruch. And the prophet Baruch is a little known prophet, especially to those of us who are part of the Protestant tradition. In fact, in the Protestant canon, the Protestant Bible, the prophet Baruch doesn't even appear. And I noticed today as I went to turn towards this reading in my own Bible that I'm not sure that the pages of this book of Baruch in my own Bible have ever actually even been touched. And what a shame that is, because we have before us today a beautiful piece of poetry. So just for context, the prophet Baruch is thought to have been alive during that time in the life of ancient Israel, when the people of Israel had been taken into exile in the land of Babylon. And so this was a time in the history of Israel, kind of like the times that we are living in, where there is devastation in the land, there's disorientation, there's loss, there is a great yearning for things to change and a great yearning for justice. And into that context, Baruch speaks these words in the 5th chapter of his prophecy. Take off your mourning clothes and oppression, Jerusalem. Dress yourself in the dignity of God's glory forever. Wrap the justice that comes from God around yourself like a robe. Place the Eternal One's glory on your head like a crown. God will show your brilliance everywhere under heaven. God will give you this name by which to be called forever, the peace that comes from justice, the honor that comes from reverence for God. Get up, Jerusalem, stand on the high place and look around to the east. See your children gathered from west to the east by the Holy One's word, as they rejoice that God has remembered them. When I listened for words or phrases in this particular passage that spoke to me earlier this week, wow, what really jumped out at me was this just beautiful image of being robed in dignity, dressed in dignity, and robed with justice. And then this piece about having the Eternal One's glory put on our heads like a crown. You know, there's an old saying that clothes don't make the man, but what I think is really true is that clothes can say a lot. Our outward clothes can say a lot about our inward feelings. And so I love this passage in which Baruch addresses the mourning of the people, right? The grief that the people have been in. And he says to them, don't be dressed in your grief. Don't be dressed in your mourning. Be dressed in dignity. Be dressed in the justice that comes from God. Put a crown on you that is God's glory. It's such a beautiful image of being clothed, like surrounded, wrapped in something other than mourning and doom and gloom. And I don't know about you, but I am somebody who feels like I've been wearing a shroud, a kind of a death shroud for a long time through this pandemic and through so much devastation and loss. So the thought of wearing something other than a shroud of devastation and loss, the thought of wearing something that would make me feel, would make our world feel like we are the glorious people and the glorious world that God has created. It really lifts my spirits this week in particular. There's another line in this passage that I love as well. It says, God will show your brilliance everywhere under heaven. When I first read this passage, I thought it was saying that that it was speaking about God's brilliance. And then I looked back and no, it's not God's brilliance that is going to be shining. It's my brilliance. It's your brilliance. It's our brilliance. It's such an honoring of who we are as human creatures. And it's actually an honoring of who we really are when we realize in our day and age that we actually are made of stardust. We really were meant to shine. And so I wonder this week what it would be like for you, for me, to imagine ourselves being clothed in peace and clothed and robed in justice that comes with a deep peace. Or what it would be like for us to imagine ourselves with a crown of glory upon our heads. Would we not stand up a bit taller? Would we not feel a bit more like anything is possible? The other theme for this week has to do with being at table and having a place at the table for everyone. That's because in the sanctuary of the church this week on Sunday, we will be sharing communion with one another. I found myself thinking about what it would be like if we not only understood ourselves to be clothed in dignity and wrapped in justice and peace and standing tall with crowns of glory upon our heads, but if we were to look at every other person through the same lens, in the same way, imagining that all of us have been clothed with this kind of honor and dignity just because we are God's glorious creations. Would it not, if we saw each other clothed in this way, would it not lead to a greater respect for one another? Would it not lead us to make room at our tables for one another so that all of our tables could be full of the dignified folks, the dignified beings that each and every one of us is? So this week, I do invite you to imagine yourself being clothed in all of those things, in peace, in glory, in dignity, in justice, standing up tall, imagining what that is like to have been dressed and clothed by God who values each and every one of us. I wonder if that might bring us closer to the peace that is intended for each one of us and for our world. And I wonder if somehow gathering at a humble stable is all about God reaching down low enough to lift up each one of us to a place of honor. May it be so for us this week. And may God's door of welcome continue to swing open for each one of us a little bit more this week. May Jesus' humble first dwelling remind us of the plenty that we already know. And may the Spirit continue to lead us into more possibility and more hospitality than we can imagine, and in so doing, making room in the inn for all. May it truly be so for us this week and always. Amen.
Hope waits for us at Advent. Hope waits for us to trust. Hope waits for our commitment to a land that's kind and just. In this time of preparation for the work of co-creation, for the birthing of